Welcome to our channel NEET Bio Simplified Biology. In this video we are gonna learn about body fluids and circulation in just 35 slides. In body fluids and circulation, we are gonna learn about blood, lymph, circulation, double circulation, regulation of cardiac activity, disorders related to circulation. Introduction. There are two types of body fluids present in human. They are intercellular fluid and extracellular fluid. Intercellular fluids are present inside the cells and contains a large amount of potassium, phosphorus, and proteins and contain medium amount of magnesium and sulfur and very low amount of sodium and fluorine where calcium is not at all present. Extracellular fluids. It includes both plasma and synovial fluids. It presents outside the cell. It contains a large amount of sodium, calcium, and bicarbonate and moderate and low amount of magnesium, sulfur, chlorine, potassium, phosphorus, and organic acids. Blood. The pH of the blood is 7.4, which is slightly alkaline. And there are two blood vessels which carry blood to the organs. They are artery and veins. Artery have a high pH and it is green, red, bright color due to the presence of hemoglobin. It contains a high amount of oxygen and a low amount of hydrogen and low amount of carbon dioxide. The pH of veins is very low, which is in purplish blue color. It contains high amount of carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions and reduced O2. Specific connective tissue consists of fluid, matrix, plasma and formed elements are called blood. Let's see plasma first. Plasma is a straw-colored fluid which constitutes about 55% of our blood and the rest 45% is one of the elements. Water constitutes about 90 to 92% of plasma and the remaining 6 to 8% consists of the plasma proteins, namely albumin, globulin, and fibrinogen. Albumin is responsible for maintaining the osmotic balance, globulin is responsible for the defense mechanism, and fibrinogen is the clotting factor. Plasma also contains nutrients like glucose, amino acids, and lipids. It contains excretory products which are organic like ammonia, urea, and uric acid, and it also contains a heparin in an inactive state which is an anticoagulant agent, and 13 clotting factors which are in an inactive state. We will see the clotting factors in the upcoming slides. And it also contains dissolved gases like oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, vitamins, enzymes, and endocrine hormones. And it includes minerals like sodium, calcium, magnesium, bicarbonate, and chlorine. Let's see blood cells. As I said earlier, the rest 45% of blood consists of blood cells. There are three types of blood cells present in human. They are RBC red blood cells, WBC white blood cells, and platelets. WBC is of two types, namely granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes consist of three blood cells, namely neutrophils, basophils, and eosinophils. Agranulocytes are of two types, namely lymphocytes and monocytes. And there are two types in lymphocytes, namely T lymphocyte and B lymphocyte. Red blood cells. Red blood cells is of about 7 mm length and 1.2 mm thickness. There are totally 5 to 5.5 million per millimeter cube red blood cells present in our blood, of which men consist of about 5 million per millimeter cube, whereas women consist of 4.5 million per millimeter cube, which is lesser than men. The shape of the red blood cells is circular and biconcave. This shape increases the surface area so the hemoglobin will be high and oxygen will be carried on high amount. Hemoglobin is the ion-containing complex protein which gives red color to the RBC. Hemocytoblast is the cell which produces red blood cells in the bone marrow of human. In camel, RBC is oval-shaped. Red blood cells uses an anaerobic respiration as it contains no nucleus, no mitochondria, no endoplasmic reticulum and therefore no cell division will occur. One RBC contains 280 million hemoglobin. In 100 milliliters of blood, 12 to 16 gram of hemoglobin will be present. One molecule of hemoglobin conjugated protein contains 4 heme and 4 globins. Hemes are made of ferrous and porphyrin, and globins are the present. Hemoglobin is made up of protein, ferrous, vitamin B12, and folic acid. Protein and ferrous are helpful in the formation of hemoglobin, and vitamin B12 and folic acid is used in the maturation of hemoglobin. The main function of the red blood cells is to carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. The lifespan of RBC is 120 days. After 120 days, they get destructed in the spleen. So, the spleen is also called graveyard of RBC. Or when the number of RBC in the blood increases, the spleen activates and decreases the RBC count. The color of RBC in single, it is in yellow color, but in bulk, it shows red color. Formation of RBC is also known as erythropoiesis. In the early stage of embryo, RBC is formed by yolk sac. Later stage of embryo, liver and spleen, and in child and adult, bone marrow produces RBC. WBC white blood cells. WBC is also known as leukocytes. The total leukocyte count is about 6,000 to 8,000 mm3. It uses aerobic respiration as it contains nucleus, mitochondria and centriole. The lifespan of WBC is very short-lived. The ratio of WBC is to RBC in blood is 1:600. WBC is of 12 to 20 mm diameter and it is colorless due to the absence of hemoglobin. It is amoeboid shape, so it will do dipedesis, which is squeeze out the WBC during the capillary action in the wound. There are two types of WBC, namely granulocytes and agranulocytes. Let's see the types of WBC in detail. There are two types of agranulocytes, namely lymphocytes and monocytes. Lymphocytes constitutes about 20 to 25% of WBC. There are two types of lymphocytes, namely T lymphocyte and B lymphocyte. Lymphocytes are the smallest, non-motile, and non-phagocytic WBC. The main function of the lymphocytes is immune response, e.g., graft rejection. Monocytes, it constitutes about 2 to 10% of the WBC. It is the largest phagocytic and motile. In tissues, it is known as macrophages, and in blood, it is known as monocytes. It is kidney or bean-shaped. See the picture, it is in bean shape. Then granulocytes. Granulocytes are of three types, namely eosinophils, basophils, and neutrophils, eosinophils. It constitutes about 2 to 3% of WBC. It is motile and non-phagocytic. The main function is allergic response, and it have a bilobed nucleus. They produce acidic dye known as eosin. Basophil constitutes about 0 to 5% of the WBC. They are motile and non-phagocytic. It is in S shape and have 3 loops. The main function of the basophil is to synthesize the serotonin, histamine, and heparin, and it also synthesizes a basic dye called methylene dye. The neutrophils, it constitutes about 60 to 65% of WBC. It is phagocytic and motile. It is largest in number. The shape of the neutrophils is bar body, which is derived from the X chromosome of the female, and it has many loops. That's why it is called polymorphonuclear neutrophils. PMP. The formation of WBC is known as the leukopoiesis. WBCs are formed in the bone marrow, spleen, lymph nodes, and thymus. Folic acid is the acid which helps in the formation of WBC. The lifespan of WBC is 4 to 8 hours in blood and 4 to 5 days in tissues, which is very short-lived, as Ty mentioned earlier. So, after their lifespan, they get destructed by the spleen. See the picture. The neutrophil, which is bar body and many loops. Eosinophil, which have 2 or bilobed nucleus. Basophil is in S shape with 3 lobes. At last, platelets. Platelets are also known as thrombocytes. Total thrombocytes count is of 1:50,000 to 3:50,000 meter per millimeter cube. And it has a diameter of 2 to 3 millimeter. It is enucleated and it is in small fragments as shown in the picture above. The lifespan of platelets is about 70 days and it gets distracted by the spleen as same as RBC and WBC. The main function of platelets is blood clotting or coagulation of blood. The process of formation of platelets is known as thrombopoiesis. The thrombopoiesis occur in the bone marrow which is carried out by the megakaryocytes. The platelets produce a platelet factor called thromboplastin which with the help of calcium helps in the blood clotting. Let's move on to blood groups. There are two types of blood groups. They are ABO blood group and RH blood group. ABO blood grouping. AB and O blood groups are discovered by Carl Landsteiner in 1900 and AB blood group was discovered by Steiny and de Castello in 1902. ABO blood grouping is based on the presence of two antigens namely A and B. Let's see the ABO blood group. A blood group A has an antigen A in their RBC and B antibody in their plasma. A blood group can donate to a group and AB blood group. And they can receive a blood from a blood group and O blood group. Blood group B, they have an antigen B in their RBC and antibody are in their blood. They can donate to B blood group and AB blood group. And they can receive a blood from B blood group and O blood group. Then AB blood group. They have the antigen AB in their RBC and no antibody present in their plasma. They can donate blood group only to the AB. But they can receive blood from a blood group, B blood group, AB blood group and O blood group. That's why AB blood group is also known as universal acceptor. Then O blood group. They have no antigen present in their RBC but they have antibody A and B in their plasma. They can donate their blood to a blood group, B blood group, AB blood group and O blood group. That's why they are known as universal donor. And they can receive blood group only from the O blood group. RH blood grouping. RH antigen is the one which is similar to the one present in rhesus monkey, which is discovered by the Landsteiner in 1940, which is observed on 80% of the human. There are two types of RH antigen. They are blood RH positive and blood RH negative. If RH is present in the blood, it is known as RH positive, and if it is absent, it is known as RH negative. Erythroblastosis fetalis. It is the hemolytic disease of newborn. Let's see them in detail. If a mother has a RH negative blood and father has a RH positive blood, if their firstborn baby is RH positive, after the delivery of the first baby, a certain antibody is produced in the mother against the RH positive blood, if it gets mixed with the mother during the delivery. So, during the second baby delivery, antibody produced in the mother destroy the RBC of the fetus, which causes anemia, jaundice, and ultimately leads to the death of the fetus. So, after the first delivery, anti-RH antibodies to be administered to prevent the erythroblastosis fetalis. Coagulation of blood. The total clotting time of blood is 2 to 3 minutes. Let's see the process of blood coagulation. The injured tissue produces a thromboplastin, which contains the clotting factors 5, 8, and 11, with the presence of calcium. Then platelets in response produces platelet factors with calcium and vitamin K. Both thromboplastin and platelet factors helps in the formation of thrombokinase. Thrombokinase converts the prothrombin into thrombin. Prothrombin is a vitamin K produced by the liver. So thrombin in response converts the fibrinogen into fibrin and blood cells. Fibrin is the reddish-brown scum produced after the blood clotting. So blood cells helps to clot the injured area. There are totally 13 clotting factors. They are I. Prothrombin, 2. Fibrinogen, 3. Thromboplastin, IV. Calcium V. Proaccelerin, Vi. Unknown, 7. Proconvertin, 8. Antihemophilic Fac A. Christmas factor, IX. Antihemophilic Fac B, X. Stewart power factor, 11. Antihemophilic Fac C, 12. Hagerman factor, 13. Fibrin stabilizing factor. Until now, we have seen the body fluids, blood, types of blood cells, and lymph. Let's move on to circulation. So, there are two types of circulation. They are open and closed. In open circulation system, the blood is pumped by the heart, passes through the open space called sinuses. Arthropods and mollusks have open circulatory system. In closed circulatory system, the blood pumped by the heart circulated through the closed network called blood vessels. Androids and chordates have closed circulatory system. Let's see the circulation in different types of organisms. Two-chambered heart, that is, heart with atrium and ventricle. Example, fishes. It is the single circulation in which heart pumps out the deoxygenated blood, which is oxygenated by the gills and supplied to the body parts, where the deoxygenated blood is returned to the heart. Then, three-chambered heart with two atrium and one ventricle. Example, amphibians and reptiles except So, three-chambered heart is an incomplete double circulation, where the oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood is collected by the left atrium and right atrium and get mixed up in the single ventricle and pumps out a mixed blood. That's why it is known as incomplete double circulation. Four-chambered heart. Four-chambered heart carried out the double circulation, which is present in birds, crocodiles and mammals. Four-chambered heart contains two atrium and two ventricles, so the deoxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood are received by left atrium and right atrium and passes on to the ventricles of the same side, and the ventricles pumps out without mixing up, in a two separate circulation. First, let's see the parts of heart. The heart has four chambers, that is right atrium, right ventricle, and left ventricle. And it also have a blood vessels, namely pulmonary artery, pulmonary veins, aorta, and vena cava. Both inferior and superior vena cava carries the deoxygenated blood from the organs to the right atrium. Pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, whereas pulmonary veins carry the oxygenated blood from the lungs. Aorta carries the oxygenated blood from the left ventricle to the organs. There are totally two nodes present in the heart. They are sinoatrial node, atrioventricular node. Sinoatrial node is present in the right upper corner of the right atrium, whereas atrioventricular node is present at the lower left corner of the right atrium. There are three septums, namely interatrial septum, which separates the right and left atria, interventricular septum, which separates the right and the left ventricle, atrioventricular septum, which separates the atrium and ventricle of the same side. There are three valves present in the septum through which the blood is passed through. There are three valves, namely tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve, and semilunar valve. Tricuspid valve, valve between the right atrium and right ventricle. Bicuspid or mitral valve, opening between the left atrium and left ventricle. Semilunar valve, opening between the right and left ventricle. Semilunar valve, opening between the left and right ventricle. Let's see the human circulatory system in detail. Human circulatory system is also known as blood vascular system because it contains heart, blood, and blood vessels. Human heart is mesodermal in origin and it is in the size of clenched fist, which is very, very small. It is located in the thoracic cavity in between the two lungs, which is slightly tilted to the left. Heart is protected by a double-walled membranous bag called pericardium. Our heart has four chambers, two small upper chambers called atria and two larger lower chambers called ventricles. A thin muscular wall called interatrial septum separates the right atria and left atria. Interventricular septum separates the right and left ventricles. Atrioventricular septum separates the atrium and ventricle of the same side, via thick fibrous tissue. Heart is made up of cardiac muscles. The walls of ventricles are much thicker than the arteriole. Nodal tissue, a specialized cardiac muscle distributed in the heart. There are two types of nodes, sinoatrial node and atrioventricular node. Sinoatrial node is a patch of tissue present in the right upper corner of the right atrium. Atrioventricular node is present in the lower left corner of the right atrium close to the atrioventricular system. A bundle of nodal fibers are present, continues from the atrioventricular node, is known as atrioventricular bundle, passes through the atrioventricular septum to emerge on the top of the inner ventricular septum and immediately divides into the right and left bundle. The branches throughout the ventricular muscle is called Purkinje fibers. The nodal muscular muscle has the ability to generate action potential without any external stimulus that is auto-excitable. Sinoatrial node can generate the maximum action potential of 70 to 75 times per minute, responsible for the rhythmic contraction of the heart, and that's why it is known as the pacemaker. Our heart normally beats between 70 to 75 times in a minute, averages of 72 beats per minute. Let's see the cardiac cycle. When the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are open, blood from the pulmonary veins flows into the left ventricle and blood from the vena cava, both inferior and superior vena cava, flows into the right ventricle through both left and right atria. The semilunar valves are closed at this stage. The sinoatrial node now generates an action potential which stimulates both the right and left atria to undergo a simultaneous contraction, which is atrial systole. This increases the blood flow to the ventricles by 30%, and the action potential is conducted to the ventricle by AVN and AV bundle, from where the bundle of this transmits the action potential throughout the entire ventricle muscle. This causes the ventricular contraction, that is ventricular systole, and the atria undergoes relaxation, that is atrial diastole. Now the ventricular systole increases the ventricular pressure, which causes the closure of the tricuspid and bicuspid valve and opens the semilunar valve. Now the pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and the pulmonary and the aorta carries the oxygenated blood to the organs. Now the ventricles relax. This is known as ventricular diastole and causes the closure of the semilunar valve, which prevents the backflow of blood into the ventricles. As the pressure declines further, the tricuspid and bicuspid valve are pushed to open by the atria. The ventricles and atria are in a relaxed position called joint diastole. The sequential event in heart, which is cyclically repeated, is called cardiac cycle. Totally, the duration of the cardiac cycle is 0.8 seconds. The duration of the atrial systole is 0.1 second, the duration of the ventricular systole is 0.3 second, and the joint diastole is 0.4 second. Stroke volume. The ventricle pumps out 70 milliliters of blood during every cardiac cycle, is known as the stroke volume. Total cardiac output. Total cardiac output can be identified by multiplying the ventricular output or stroke volume by heart rate, that is, 70 milliliters of blood into 72 beats per minute is 5,000 milliliters, or we can say it as 5 liter. Electrocardiograph. Electrocardiograph is used to obtain the electrocardiogram. So, ECC is nothing but the graphical representation of the electrical activity of the heart during the cardiac cycle. It was discovered by Einthoven. To obtain the electrocardiograph, 3 electrodes are placed in the human at 2 wrist and left ankle. The picture shows the electrocardiograph. The point P represents the atrial depolarization or atrial systole, which leads to the contraction of the both atria. The QRS complex represents the ventricular depolarization or ventricular systole, which represents the ventricular contraction. The contraction starts shortly after the Q, which begins the marking of the ventricular systole. The point T represents the ventricular depolarization or ventricular diastole, which represents the return of ventricles from excited to normal state. This represents the end of the ventricular systole. The heartbeat rate can be identified by the number of QRS complex in the electrocardiograph. Let's move into the next topic, double circulation. Double circulation usually happens in humans in a closed circulation. The blood vessels which helps in the double circulation are artery and veins. There are 3 layers in both artery and veins. The external layer called tunica externa or adventitious, the middle layer, thin layer called tunica media, and the innermost layer tunica intima. Arteries carry the oxygenated blood except the pulmonary artery, and veins carry deoxygenated blood except pulmonary veins. Let's see the pathway of artery and veins. So the artery with oxygenated blood pass through the arterioles, then into capillaries, and the oxygenated blood reaches the organs. Then the vein capillaries collects the deoxygenated blood and carries through the venules and finally reaches the veins. The picture shows the layers of the blood vessels. The lumen, endothelium, inner layer called tunica intima, middle layer called tunica media, and the outermost layer called tunica externa. Let's see the process of double circulation. In double circulation, as shown in the figure, both inferior and superior vena cava carries the deoxygenated blood to the right atrium from the body parts. So when the tricuspid valve opens, the deoxygenated blood passes into right ventricle. Then the pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, where the deoxygenated bloods are converted into oxygenated bloods and carried by the pulmonary vein to the left atrium. When the bicuspid valve opens, the oxygenated blood reaches the left ventricle, and the aorta transfers the oxygenated blood to the body parts, and then deoxygenated blood are again collected by the superior and vena cava. So the body parts which collects the deoxygenated bloods are known as the systematic circulation. The circulation which transfers the oxygenated blood is known as pulmonary circulation. In systematic circulation, oxygen, nutrients are provided, whereas the carbon dioxide and harmful substances are carried away. Hepatic portal circulation. It is a special type of double circulation which happens in our digestive tract, where the intestine, deoxygenated blood from the intestine is carried by the hepatic portal vein to the liver, then to the inferior or superior vena cava. Regulation of cardiac activity. The total circulation of the human body is controlled by three things. First one, nodal tissues, which are present inside the heart. The neurogenic control means medulla oblongata has an automatic nervous system, autonomic nervous system, which is of two types, namely sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system decreases the heartbeat during the normal condition, whether the sympathetic nervous system increases the heartbeat during stress condition. Then hormonal control. Adrenaline are released during the stress condition to increase the heartbeat, and noradrenaline is released to control the heartbeat during the normal condition. Thyroxine T3 reduces the heartbeat, whether the T4 increases the heartbeat. So T3 is used during the normal condition, whether T4 is used during the stress condition. Diseases related to circulation. Anemia, due to the reduced hemoglobin content in blood. Polycythemia or hyperglycemia, due to the increased RBC in blood. Erythrocytopenia or hypoglycemia, due to the reduced RBC in blood. Leukocytosis, due to the increased WBC in blood, which is the symptom of leukemia. Leukopenia, due to the reduced WBC in blood. Thrombocytosis, due to the increased platelets in blood. Thrombocytopenia, due to the reduced platelets in blood. Hypertension, due to the increased BP for prolonged time. Normal BP, 120/80ths of a millimeter Hg. Hypertension, 180/90ths of a millimeter Hg. Atherosclerosis or coronary artery disease. CAD, due to affected blood vessels, mainly artery. Arteriosclerosis, hardening of the artery due to calcium deposits. 11. Angina called angina pectoris, acute chest pain due to insufficient O2 reaching heart muscles. 12. Heart failure, when the heart is not pumping the blood effectively to meet the needs of the body. Symptom, congestion of the lungs. 13. Heart block, due to the blockage of sinoatrial node to atrioventricular node or atrioventricular node to bundle of His. 14. Ischemia, when the part of the heart does not work. 15. Dextrocardia, when the heart is located in right side. 16. Pounding, heart beats faster during the extreme emotions. 17. Cerebrovascular accident, CVA, blockage of artery in the brain. 18. Epstein's disease, lowering of tricuspid valve. 19. Fibrillation, irregular action of the right artery and left ventricle and left artery, treated with defibrillator. 20. Tachycardia, Increased heartbeat per minute, i.e., more than 72 times per minute.